OMG Zuz, boys, girls, and betweeners, how are you doing? I can tell you how I'm doing. I am really tired. Not tired of life, just really tired in terms of sleep because I have been trying to watch Evo, which is going on right now, which we'll talk about a lot, and it's crazy hours for us here in Australia. I have to be up at 1 a.m. to watch the start of pools and then finish at 5 and then go to sleep again and crap like that, so that's my life. How are you doing there, man?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you, Malamber, now that you're here as well?
Yeah, finally actually made it here. Freezing my butt off, but yeah, awesome for a Sunday.
Yep, Malamber has become a regular fixture of the podcast because we felt like we should have an intelligent opinion on here for once.
Then what am I doing here again?
I don't fucking know. No one's intelligent, so we didn't know where to find one.
Fair enough.
So yes, this is being recorded. At the time of recording, this is it's Sunday in Australia, it's Saturday in America, so we're about halfway through Evo. We're actually recording it as it's going on as we speak right now, but it's during Smash Pools, so who cares? Mia's gonna kill me for that.
I like Smash Pools.
Who likes Smash Pools?
Well, I'm missing this because I have a duty to do and be here for the podcast, so let's get this rolling.
Yeah, let's do this so that they can actually go back to Smash Pools. So yes, it's going on. We don't know. You'll probably by the time you guys get to listen to this, it'll probably be over, and you'll probably know how it finishes. But right now, we're very excited because at least Nairman and I are very excited. Malamber apparently couldn't give a fuck about Evo. What do you think about that, Malamber?
I like to watch Evo on and off, but yeah, I must admit I'm not as obsessed as you guys are about it, though I do believe you have some happy news as far as Jury, your favourite character, is concerned.
We do, yes. Well, this is more of a personal preference for me that people who follow my Twitter would know that yesterday a jury specialist, for the first time ever, made it into top 8 for Evo. Again, by the time you're probably listening to this, they've probably already been knocked out and someone else, like Infiltration, has won. But fuck it, I'm happy right now. So that's me. That's kind of what's going on. Like, Street Fighter has been really good this year. I love it when, like, in earlier years of Street Fighter, it was kind of a predictable field because of the way that tiers were structured. So you had a lot of Ryus, a lot of Akumas, a lot of Sagats, those kind of characters making it into top 8. But the last couple of years, it's been a very varied field, and everyone's rocking different characters. There's going to be no mirror matches. So yeah, I'm very happy with how the top 8's turned out. I didn't get a chance, obviously, because of watching Street Fighter all day yesterday. I had no idea how Smash Wii U yet went, how the Brawl, is it Brawl or Melee they play on GameCube? I'm gonna get punched for this.
It is Melee, the one on GameCube. Brawl is the Wii one.
Melee is the... Yes, okay, so Melee is the good one, Brawl is the bad one, got it. How did Wii U go? Because that's wrapped up now. And you said that you were kind of disappointed by the overall result of that.
Not so much disappointed, just that I was doing commentary with the Brain Scratch guys all this afternoon, but I kind of kept tabs on how it was going. Apparently the guy who was a favorite won, and there wasn't too much competition for him going into it, so it was kind of a foregone conclusion that he was actually going to win. And that turned out to be the case, so no real surprises there.
Yeah, I can tell you it was Zero with Sheik and Diddy Kong who won Smash Wii U.
Yep, it was. Not surprising considering those are kind of two well-known good characters in the game, so pretty, I don't want to say safe choices, but pretty standard choices for high-level tournament play.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to me because just yesterday, before this all took place, I was talking to you about Diddy's especially, and of course Diddy, when the game first came out, Diddy was considered to be like typically top tier in terms of the character rankings there, and he obviously did get hit with a nerf stick pretty badly. But given the fact that Diddy won, obviously, is it safe to say he didn't get hit hard enough?
Not so much that he didn't get hard enough, it was more so that we had one really good player who happened to be really good with a pretty good character. Diddy got nerfed pretty bad to the point where I don't think he's considered the best anymore, but he's still pretty high up there, so it's not like he was choosing, the best of the best character to the point where everyone was choosing this character anyway, so it wasn't too much of a shock that he was using this character, but it's not like it gave him an unfair advantage.
Yeah. Well, the top 8, in terms of characters, I can tell you, was, so that you had Diddy Kong Sheik, second place was Sheik, third place was Zero Suit Samus, huzzah, because that's my main, that's my girl. Fourth place was Wario, Pac-Man, Rosalina, and Lumina. Fifth was Mario and Marth. Sixth was Rosalina, Lumina, and Olimar. Seventh was Pikachu, and seventh tied was Ness. So that seems like a fairly varied field. There wasn't really any double ups there either.
No, not really. It's more of just kind of a preference, which Smash 4 has been pretty good with. It really just comes down to who you like to play as, compared to previous Smash games where Brawl was pretty much you had a few really good characters and that was it, and Melee where the roster is a lot smaller and there's really only a few really good characters that a lot of people like to use. So, not that you can't use other characters in Melee, it's just that it's really hard to, compared to, say, Smash 4 where it's a lot more balanced because that's actually what they focused on in this game.
Yeah. What's interesting to me about the Street Fighter finals, which are coming up tomorrow, is that you've got, in winners bracket, you've got Ken and Akuma. Akuma has been top tier for a very long time, but Ken making it there is pretty unique. He's considered, I said this last week, he's actually kind of maybe mid-upper tier at best. Jury, same basket, mid or mid-upper at best. Evil Ryu, top tier. Elena is just a wild card because she was new in Ultra last year. And Chun-Li, who again, very mid-tier kind of character. Losers bracket, you've got Balrog, who is mid-upper, but like he's being piloted by PR Balrog, who's always been very solid with that character. You got Rolento, who's really just a mad, kind of irritating troll sort of character. Elena again, and you got Knuckledoo coming up last with DeCapre and Guile. So yeah, as I said, that's like a very interesting field to me. A lot of should be some great matches, hopefully.
Oh, definitely. I hope to see some high-level play, considering I know nothing about Street Fighter, so I'm going to be amazed regardless.
You'll see two characters moving back and forth a lot. You'll be asking yourself, why the fuck aren't they hitting each other?
Poke, poke, poke.
Actually, I just realized we've gotten this far without actually telling anyone what EVO is about, because if you don't know what fighting games are, you probably have no freaking clue what we're talking about. EVO is the Evolution Fighting Game World Championships. They take place in Las Vegas every single year, and they've just been getting bigger and better every year, pretty much. And while they're not quite yet on the same scale of spectacle as some of the Korean StarCraft tournaments and things like that, they're getting right up there, I think. I think that, like, I'm actually, like, judging by just how completely huge it's been this year, I'm actually kind of curious to know how long it'll be before they stop going to hotels and start basically renting out stadiums.
It was actually quite interesting. I was reading an article the other day about how the boss of ESPN is basically still now panning video games as not being real sports or esports. And I think League of Legends was what he was originally talking about. But you're right. I mean, if you have a look at it, they're holding it at hotels and casinos, and they're getting, millions of people watching these things. And yet your established sports areas like ESPN and that sort of thing are still kind of going, well, they're video games, they're just for kids. Therefore, well, sorry, that's not a real sport.
Which I find kind of ironic, considering they're the network that has repeatedly in the past shown Texas Hold'em and other poker tournaments.
And that's also, and the ironic thing about that is the fact that where EVO is being held now is also in the same ballroom as events like Texas Hold'em and World Poker Tour and things like that.
Yeah, so it's just kind of yeah, I'd agree that they're not really sports, but at the same time, you've shown even worse crap before, ESPN, so don't act like you are all high and mighty in this.
The reason why that literally just brought it up for me, because I was watching Game Theory the other day, and they're talking about, them showing things like competitive cup stacking or Texas Hold'em and stuff like that. Where do you kind of draw that line between what is actual competition and what isn't?
Well, to me, I mean, you look at the Olympics, and over the course of the Olympics, there have been dozens upon dozens of sports which have been both added and removed as actual Olympic events. I mean, they've had really just freaking weird crap in there in the past. I can't think of any off the top of my head because I'm still stupidly tired. But, they've added events like BMX to, the Olympics and things like that. So, what passes for a sport is always going to be, like, something that's in a state of flux. And I think that, like, now is just, it's like what Twitch is. I mean, Twitch is the medium that brings us these kind of events. It's still very much in its infancy. It's still very much a growing medium. It still has a long way to go in terms of how big it can get. And I think by the same token, that also goes for esports, because let's face it, even if, the head of ESPN is going to be a dick about it and say that these things aren't sports, it's only going to be a matter of time before the kids who are watching these things today, grow up to become the adults who are running these fucking, companies and corporations and things like that. So, you're basically trying to hold back a glacier, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's just a very different time we're going in, considering we have a lot more injuries because you want to play bigger, you want to play harder in sports, and gaming is just more popular than it was even when we were little kids. So it's just kind of a combination of maybe some safety things that we're seeing going forward, as well as just what more people do with their free time.
Yeah, now, moving on a little bit from there, they had the Street Fighter panel happening today from Capcom. It just wrapped up about an hour ago. And the really big revelation that came out of that was that, and you probably haven't even heard about this yet, Melinda, is that Street Fighter V is going to be launching with only 16 characters. Now, 16 characters for a Street Fighter game is pretty fucking small, considering that Ultra Street Fighter at the moment has 44. So, what is interesting about that, though, is the fact that they're moving to a very different type of business model, essentially, from what they've done in the past. In the past, they've obviously, the running joke has been that, you get Street Fighter, then there's Super Street Fighter, then there's Ultra Street Fighter, and there's Ultra Super Secret Mega Special Awesome Street Fighter Edition Turbo Plus EX. I don't fucking know. Point is, though, is that now they're going to just the singular model. You just buy Street Fighter V, it launches with 16 characters, and they're going to basically, from that point forward, just release every other character from there on out as DLC. Now that in and of itself is not really a huge surprise, it's just basically moving with the tides. What is interesting about that is the fact that there's going to be free. It's not going to be, pay for a season pass, it's not going to be buy them incrementally or anything like that. Basically that once you buy the product, these characters are guaranteed, locked in, and you can either, I think, people are still a little bit fuzzy about whether you can actually pay to unlock them or just basically play the game to unlock them, but you'll basically be able to get them for free one way or the other, provided you're willing to put in the work, essentially. So that's a very big departure from Street Fighter 4 and from Street Fighter Cross Tekken and from every other game they've ever made, where they tried to nickel and dime us for every single bit of money that they can.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm just really intrigued about the idea that everything in the game will be able to be unlocked in the game based on playing it, which is how things used to be done back in the old days. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting that they're going to a free kind of unlock pattern versus, the whole super, hyper, ultra, mega, whatever editions, which we're kind of used to at this point. So I can applaud them at least for this, making it free and making it incremental releases, which should keep interest in the game high after release.
Yeah, now I know your standpoint on DLC, Malba, so how do you think about this change in direction for them?
Yeah, I mean, if it's true, it's a smart move. Because you're right, all you ever got was Super, Mega, Ultra, yada yada yada, and, by the third or fourth iteration, people just aren't interested in spending that money anymore. So unlocking it in-game is awesome. It's a great idea, and I think more companies should do it, because at the end of the day, I mean, even if you were to kind of put in a option that, if you're impatient and you don't want to sit there and you don't want to play through it, yes, you could pay for it, but you could still unlock it if you were willing to go through the effort of doing that. I mean, so in that way that the end user gets to decide their experience. So they get to decide, I don't want to sit here and play for 200 hours to get Sagat, so I'm going to buy Sagat, but I want to get Akuma and I want to get really good at him, for example, then, I'm going to play through to get to that character. So by the time I get to Akuma, I'm an excellent player, so when I pick up Akuma, I can then go and play him, sort of thing.
Yeah, and what was interesting about it was, and this is something that really applies directly to you, is that the reasoning behind this change in direction that Ono-san was saying was that they basically acknowledged the fact that with every single incremental release, they were actually shrinking their player base, because basically, back a few years ago, I tried to get Mel Emery playing Street Fighter, and I had to, I bought it for him because, I just wanted him to try and play it and get a feel for it and that kind of thing. And so I bought him Street Fighter, then I had to buy him Super Street Fighter, and then I had to buy him Super Street Fighter Arcade Edition and things like that. And, eventually he fell away from it, which is fine. That's, just what happens. You might, we're talking about doing it for the channel, so maybe it'll come back. I don't know. That's not the point. Point is the fact that he's stuck on an older version of the game. If he wants to get into the game again now, he has to go again and pay, the 10, 15, 20 bucks, whatever it is, to get Ultra Street Fighter 4. If he was kind of sitting on the fence, obviously he wouldn't do that. He'd say, fuck it, this is a game I've already bought. Why do I have to keep paying money for it just to get the latest version and just get the latest version of the rules for it? So that in and of itself is something, as I said, that applies that you have personal experience in, because they're basically saying, well, okay, we're making money off releasing these incremental versions, but it's the law of diminishing returns, because every time we make a new version, we're getting less money back for it.
Yeah, which is pretty much what it is. And you're right, I mean, you did kind of have to shoehorn me into it to start with. And yeah, okay, I know you've been prodding me about doing a salty run back, so I'll probably end up doing that on your channel. But yeah, to me, it's, if you nickel and dime, especially the more casual players, you're left with only the hardcore base. And yes, while the hardcore base will keep paying, essentially you're missing out on a lot of people who would otherwise play your game because they don't want to pay for the next upgrade, when really at the end of the day they're more comfortable with what they've already got.
So that's just a very interesting development from a company that's in the past had, since Street Fighter 2, has had a very different approach to how they release these games. Moving on from there, we're going to move on to the sad news that, as you guys know, I mean, this has been all over the internet, so you would know that basically the day after we released last week's podcast, the president of Nintendo Japan, Satoru Iwata, passed away, unfortunately. And I did get a lot of requests from people on my Twitter to basically put out a video kind of on the day and state my feelings on, what he meant to me and how I felt this would affect the games industry and things like that. I thought about it a little bit, and I didn't do it because, to be fair, Nairman is easily the biggest Nintendo fan out of the three of us, and I felt that it would not be fair to... I wouldn't be able to give a balanced viewpoint without his input, so why don't we start with you, Nairman? What did this news mean to you, and how do you think it's going to affect Nintendo moving forward?
Oh, it's really quite shocking news, considering, I don't want to say it was completely out of the blue, but we were told he was on the mend, so it is a bit surprising. It means a lot to a lot of gamers, considering he worked on a lot of very important games. He worked as a coder on Earthbound, which has a very big cult following. He basically remade the game ground up so they could actually make it. He worked on the Kirby games. He worked on Super Smash Bros. Melee so it could actually get released in time for the holiday season. When the GameCube came out, he worked on Pokemon Gold and Silver in order to basically quadruple the size of the game compared to what it was when they were actually making it. He worked on a lot of games, especially at the time when he was a really high-up person. He was still, in the trenches actually making the games, so he was a big influence in a lot of Nintendo games from the 80s and from the late 80s to about the early 2000s, so he has a pretty long tenure, so it is pretty surprising, and he did mean a lot to a lot of gamers, so it's a big loss to Nintendo. He was also a very grounded president. He made the famous Nintendo Directs now, where he gets in front of the camera, does some silly stuff from time to time, and presents the games to everyone. So he was very down to earth. He seemed like a very charming fellow. So it's a very sad news, and the search has to go on, and we have to try and find the new president now. And right now, it doesn't seem like we have any particular forerunners.
Okay, Melma, do you have any thoughts about basically what it meant to you, considering you were a child of Nintendo? You did have a Super Nintendo at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, it's very sad. It will be interesting for Nintendo going forward because, as Nathan said, he's really that kind of... He was a ground-up guy, so he was a programmer, he worked with the games, he understood games, and he understood gamers. I mean, while I didn't agree with the Wii and the Wii U, he still understood, his famous thing is games were supposed to be fun. That's what it was about. So it will be interesting to see where they go from here. Do they become more corporate like other companies have, like Sony and Xbox, where they just basically, that charm that he had, will they lose that going forward? Because at the end of the day, whoever picks it up, unless they really like Iwata, I can't see them going forward with that idea. You may find that they will then move away from his idea of games are supposed to be fun to, well, we're a company, we've got to make money, so let's go and shoehorn in everything what we possibly can. So it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of months when they establish a new CEO, where they take the company.
And that was kind of my thinking as well, and that's what I want to ask Airman, is that do you think that with Iwata gone now, unfortunately, do you think that this may present an opportunity for a sea change at Nintendo? Because obviously while Nintendo does have a lot of very beloved properties and things like that, there's no getting around the fact that, especially the last few years, that while they were heralded as being geniuses for introducing the world to the Wii and motion controls and ushering in a new era of casual gaming, that in the 5, 6, 7 years since then, that the company's been going down what could arguably be a wrong path. They've been very narrow-minded. They've been very much against modern media. They've obviously had the rain battles with the Evolution tournament in the past. Last year, I think it was that that Smash was there, but they had to fight to get Smash there because Nintendo didn't want Smash to be in a tournament because games are supposed to be fun. That was their argument. They didn't want them to be competitive. There's that. They've been fighting battles with Nintendo about people being able to put up videos, and I still to this day cannot put up a Nintendo video without being claimed copyright. Things like that, and again, like the Wii U, Nintendo having this history of building their consoles essentially on gimmicks. Ever since the GameCube moving forward from there. So do you think that, as I said, do you think this represents an opportunity for them to try and approach things differently and maybe correct this course a little bit? Or do you think that they're still, the old guard that's, still at Nintendo is still way too entrenched in their ways to be able to do that?
It's hard to say considering we don't really have any news of a frontrunner at this time. What I'm hoping they do is they do kind of a in-between where they get someone a bit younger, they get someone who has worked in games before, basically to try and steer them in a bit more modern way. I hope they keep the whole games are supposed to be fun sort of thing. They keep the games first mentality versus, the whole corporates being where we have to make money, so they have to, where they have the whole, we're a games company, we have to make money, so let's shoehorn everything in first. No, I hope they keep the whole games are fun, let's make each a unique experience mentality, but the president hopefully steers them in a bit more modern direction where they say, okay, our consoles haven't been doing so good, let's try and make a good machine to play our good games on. So I'm just hoping for sort of an in-between where it's a bit younger so he can sort of steer the old guard in a bit more normal, I don't want to say normal, a more modern direction while keeping the essence of what made Nintendo great.
I guess there's nothing wrong with games being fun. I mean, that has been the mantra of Nintendo for quite some time now, and I don't think anyone would want to change that. I think where the problem comes in, and going back to that example with Evo, for people who don't know, I'm not sure if I mentioned this on a previous podcast, but I'm going to say it again anyway, that Smash wasn't at Evo for a very long time, and essentially they had a vote where people could donate money to charity and then vote on which game they wanted to take up a free slot at Evolution. I believe it was last year, it may have been the year before. Point is that basically everyone voted for Smash. Everyone wanted Smash, they wanted to have Melee back, so they voted for it, and Melee won by a country mile, and so they announced that they're going to have Melee as the game that was going to fill this extra slot. And the very second that they did, Nintendo stepped in and said, no, we're not going to let you do that, because games are supposed to be fun, they're not supposed to be competitive, can't do it. And the only reason that they allowed it at the end of the day was that because so many people contributed their money to charity and so many people obviously wanted the game there, that the public outcry that ensued basically caused them to rethink their stance.
Oh, definitely. And I think they've, since that event, kind of opened their eyes a little bit. And they kind of stepped back and said, okay, maybe we can still have fun, but still keep this bit of a competitive edge, considering Smash 4, a lot of focus was on character balancing and keeping things as fair as possible for said high-level players. There's also their latest game, Splatoon, which has a lot of weapons, a lot of different variety, but also tried to keep things as balanced as possible so you can play the way you want to play. So I think they've kind of gone back and thought about it and said, maybe we can make this fun, but also make it a bit more competitive, which people seem to still enjoy. It's just a different kind of enjoyment.
Well, Nairman said his kind of piece for what he thinks he would like to see from Nintendo in the future. Do you got any thoughts in there, Malamo?
Not currently. I'm kind of sitting back and waiting to see what they do. I mean, Splatoon's a step in the right direction. It would be interesting to see whether or not that does become part of an esport, depending on how it develops. But yeah, look, I mean, I agree with Nairman. At this point in time, we're kind of sitting back and waiting to see who becomes the CEO and like what direction they're looking to take the company in after that.
Fair enough. All right, moving on to our third topic. Again, the very day after we released our podcast, the trailer for Suicide Squad was released. It had been released before that Comic-Con, and we had some kind of shitty Vimeo, Vine on camera phone footage, but this was the actual proper release of the trailer for Suicide Squad. So we'll go with the biggest DC fan in the group first of all. Nairman, what were your thoughts on Suicide Squad?
No, it looks pretty good. A lot of my fears are a bit dissuaded now that I can actually see some of the characters in motion, especially Harley Quinn. It's just kind of interesting to me that DC kind of got all pissy about it when they released the trailer, which was kind of funny. But as far as the trailer itself goes, I'm intrigued. I was intrigued before, but I was kind of cautious, and I wanted to see how, particularly Harley Quinn, and we got a little bit of Joker at the end, how they kind of go about their business. So I feel that they're going in a pretty good direction with this. Definitely a more out there superhero flick compared to others. So it looks good so far. I'll need another trailer or two until I can actually say whether or not this looks amazing or not, but I'm confident in the direction it's going so far. Okay.
Malma, you obviously checked out as well, but you're not a fan of comics, you don't really know who the Suicide Squad are. As a person who is kind of a babe in the woods in that regard, what was your takeaway from it?
Look, I mean, not understanding a lot of the references in there, it was kind of good to be able to sit back and kind of look at it impartially. However, Leto's got some very big shoes to fill. I'm intrigued because he sounds very much like Ledger. Like Ledger's Joker, at least in my mind anyway. So, while it didn't impress me as much as I thought it would, it's got me interested enough to want to watch it when it comes out.
Yeah, I think that, like, anyone who's kind of kicking up a shit about Leto kind of obviously has a very short memory, because going back to Dark Knight Rises, the internet lost its freaking mind when they first saw Heath Ledger as the Joker and first heard him talk, and then went, oh my god, sounds something like the Joker should. He's going to be a terrible Joker, he's going to ruin the entire thing. And obviously when the movie came out, people fell in love with him. So for that reason alone, I'm giving that topic a very wide berth.
No, so that's fair enough. I would be doing that as well. You wouldn't want to go anywhere near that at the moment. But, I mean, like I said, I'm interested to watch it. And you know me, I don't get hugely interested from trailers of movies, because I tend to want to see a bit more before I actually want to invest money in going to see it. But it's got me interested enough to keep watching for it.
And I think that's all this trailer was trying to do, just get people who are a bit on the fence more interested in the property and the idea of the Suicide Squad actually being a movie.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think it did its job well. Obviously, we don't know much about the plot other than, yes, it's the characters we knew who were going to be in it are in it. So, it didn't reveal a whole lot of info, but it didn't need to reveal a lot of info. It just needed to show characters in action so we could see, okay, they have an idea of what they're actually doing.
Do you think it might be a tough sell for people just in general? Because, looking again, kind of, obviously it's hard to talk about DC without comparing them to Marvel, that obviously, DC wants to get a slice of that big fat Avengers cake, and the reason that Avengers was so terribly successful was that they'd spent time building up these characters in their own movies, so that by the time they got to the ensemble piece, which was Avengers, people knew who all these characters were. Whereas Suicide Squad, not only do they not have the luxury of having those singular movies to build up the characters, but a lot of these characters are pretty damn obscure. I mean, I'm a fairly, I like to think of myself as a decent DC fan, and I'm still not familiar with half the characters in the Suicide Squad that they're actually peddling out.
That's definitely understandable. The thing about the Suicide Squad is that everyone in the squad, except for probably Harley Quinn at this point and Deadshot, are very expendable, so I guarantee at least 2 or 3 of the members that we saw in the cast photo and early on probably won't be around towards the end of the movie. I can definitely understand the whole Marvel comparison, but it's also more of a... They're probably banking on Joker and Harley Quinn to kind of sell the movie to everyone, which is understandable considering everyone knows who the Joker is, at least compared to other movie villains for superheroes.
And that's what I find interesting, like you were saying before, Naaman, is how pissed DC got. When really, when you look at the trailer, it didn't give a lot of information. So, and it didn't get a lot, I don't even know who Deadshot is. Don't hang me for it. So, for me, why get so pissed at a trailer that didn't reveal a lot of anything? And come on, it's the internet. It's, it's going to get out there regardless.
Yeah, that was just kind of the interesting thing, is that how pissy they got when they had to have known this was going to happen. They had to have known people were going to record it and post it online, so they really should have just released it pretty much after the press conference actually happened and circumvented this whole mess. But, I'm not the marketing people at DC, so I don't know what their thought process was for this.
Yeah, it's something that's a very odd choice regarding that, because the same thing is with the Deadpool trailer that they showed at Comic-Con. I mean, that still hasn't even been released yet, but the entire trailer is available on YouTube if you want to look at some shitty version that was recorded on a mobile phone.
Yeah, pretty much, and I heard that was actually really good too. I've only seen snippets of it because I haven't been able to really find the entire thing, at least not in any half-decent quality, but, that also looks pretty good.
Yeah, no, there's no decent quality, don't worry about that. The one I saw was terrible. But yeah, that's kind of the point though, is that this stuff is going to get out there. You can't confiscate everyone's phones, and even if you do, there's going to be some asshole with the camera hidden in his cap. You're not going to be able to stop it from getting out there, so why risk the product being tainted by people who are excited about it, watching these really shitty, blurry, off-screen versions and just going, it didn't look as good as I thought it was going to look, when you can just, show it to the people at Comic-Con, wait a day if you really need to, and then put it up on YouTube.
No, definitely. It's just a confusing thing. I don't think these big companies quite realize how fast word spreads on these things anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of it too has to do with this idea of, get it exclusive at Comic-Con or get it exclusive as here. To me, the day of the exclusive reveal is pretty much over, because like we've all said, at the end of the day, you can release something exclusively at Comic-Con or what have you not. I guarantee you within minutes of it being shown, it will be online, it will be posted. I hope it doesn't force people or companies to basically hold back from these events, like not want to give those exclusives or want to give that product there because they're afraid that it's going to get out before they're ready for it.
Well, I think people are going these days for a different reason rather than the exclusive trailers anymore. I think they're going to actually see the actors and stars, go out for the camaraderie and a little bit of the shopping and the whole just going into downtown San Diego, hanging out with a bunch of other big movie, comic book, whatever, nerds, and just having a good old time. And so I think they need to realize that it stopped being about them now. It's more about the whole fan opportunity versus it's our big press conference, essentially.
Now, along with the Suicide Squad getting released last week, we also got to see our first peek of the big bad from the new X-Men Apocalypse movie, Mr. Nsabanua, Apocalypse himself, and he looks pretty freaking goofy, to be honest.
Ivan Ooze is back. Ooh.
Yeah, so myself personally, I think he looks dumb as hell. Man, you're not really a big Marvel fan, so what are your thoughts on Mr. Ivan Ooze there?
I have no idea who this guy is. I've seen some X-Men stuff based on the '89 cartoon series, so compared to other Marvel franchises, I'm somewhat familiar with X-Men. The only two I'm really familiar with are X-Men and Spider-Man, so I know the hero characters, I just don't know many of the villains, so maybe if they can sell me on this, I might go see it, but compared to, say, Days of Future Past, which was pretty good, this one looks kind of goofy and not terribly interesting.
Yeah, Malamo, your thoughts?
No, stop it. Stop it! Why do you keep doing this? It's not like they don't already have established canon. I mean, they've already got in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie a really good representation of what he should look like. I mean, all they've done is basically stick blue paint on a guy, chuck some weird tentacles on his head, and no, stop. Just go back to what made him cool the first time and stick with that.
Well, I think the key difference there is that Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers is clearly a CGI construct, whereas this is, as you said, a guy in a suit.
But that's the problem is, okay, you've shown that you can do Thanos as a CGI construct. Yes, I understand that at the moment, especially if you have a look at Star Wars, they're moving away from CGI, mainly because Star Wars' CGI was so freaking terrible. But okay, you've established that Thanos can look good, and I mean, if you have a look at Thanos in the comics and all that sort of thing, this guy's superhuman. He's massive, and when you look at him in that shot, and it's not a fair shot because he's actually not purple. It was the lighting that was on him. He basically just looks like another human. He doesn't look superhuman. He doesn't look like, to me, what I think Thanos should look like.
Well, here's the interesting thing, and I'm going to speak now as probably the person who's most well-versed in X-Men lore out of the three of us, is that the thing that people may not realize is that X-Men is not owned by Marvel. The actual comic book is still owned by Marvel, but the movie rights they sold to 20th Century Fox a long time ago. So at the moment you've got DC making their own stuff, Marvel making their own stuff, 20th Century Fox is making anything to do with mutants, which is why in the Avengers sequel that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were not actually mutants, quote-unquote. They were just people with superpowers, and that was kind of it. They didn't really go into any further explanation of that. And also that you've obviously got Sony, who owns Spider-Man as well, which is another franchise which is split off from Marvel. So the interesting thing to me is that, again, you're looking at another company which is looking at trying to get a big slice of that, a big Avengers pie, the pie made of money. And the problem that they're having is one that's very different to what DC is having with their franchise, is that they have this legacy of films already, which they have made. They've got all the X-Men movies, they've got Days of Future Past, they've got X-Men First Class, they've got 2 Wolverine movies, but they seem to be very content to only carry across the elements from those movies that they like, and then just cheerfully ignore the ones that they don't like, and it's making for a very mishmash continuity, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's just kind of a mess at this point. It just feels like they're making this movie just so they can keep on to the rights, because they know X-Men is a lucrative property, and they know Marvel would love to have them back, and they're just... I don't want to say they're being spiteful, because I don't think that's the intent. I think they just know that we can make money here, let's keep making the movies even if we can't really decide what to really do with them.
Yeah. And you look at X-Men Days of Future Past. Have you seen that, Mal, out of curiosity?
Yeah, I've seen it.
You have seen it, yeah. So you would know that Days of Future Past is, this isn't much of a spoiler, but essentially Days of Future Past exists solely for the purpose of trying to retcon out all the shit they didn't like from all the previous X-Men movies.
Which would explain why it looked like it did.
It was still a good movie, but essentially, you look at the ending of that film, where Wolverine returns to the mansion, and you see how everyone's back to being alive. Jean Grey is back to being alive after being killed off in X-Men 3. Rogue is back after being changed to a non-mutant in X-Men 3. A lot of this is to do with removing things from X-Men 3, which is arguably the worst movie of the entire series. Thank you, Brett Ratner. Well, rather, fuck you, Brett Ratner. But... yeah, and this is kind of what I'm saying, is that, but even by doing that, which they've, tried to bring these characters back so they can exist in the continuity once more, there's still just really weird things for people who are kind of, comic book geeks like me, or just really nitpicky geeks like me, where it's what's the deal with, Wolverine's claws? Are they adamantium or not? Because at the end of the second Wolverine movie, they were no longer adamantium, and then they were adamantium again in Days of Future Past, and now the past has been changed, so... it's just, needlessly confusing the way that they've been chopping and changing things to try and make things work, rather than either just, taking that baggage and just carrying it along with them regardless, or just saying fuck it and using something like X-Men First Class as a reboot point and just ignoring those movies that preceded it.
To me, it just seems like they've tried to, especially when you look at the Wolverine movies, they've tried to make those movies in a vacuum. Away from the other movies, and then when you kind of try and bring them back into that continuity of the other movies, they no longer make sense. So if you look at the movies as an individual vacuumized movie where literally it follows its own continuity, and then you look at Days of Future Past, where basically they've gone, well shit, we've made all these individual movies, they're all in their own little universes created in a vacuum, now we have to kind of put them back together to do that Avengers style thing. So you're right, to me Days of Future Past was basically their ability to wipe the slate and come back and say, well, okay, everything is back where it was, let's go down the Avenger path of making this once again a big franchise where it's all together.
Yeah, but even Days of Future Past doesn't really correct everything, so there's still obviously very weird continuity issues that arise out of just the very fact that they did not plan as far ahead in the future as Marvel did. For example, you look at the first Wolverine movie. At the end of the first Wolverine movie, you get to see a Professor X rather, from the 80s, and given that Professor X in the 60s looks like James McAvoy, Professor X in the 80s should have kind of looked like James McAvoy, but just looked like a young Patrick Stewart, because they get to cast James McAvoy as the young Professor X.
Yeah, and that comes back to creating movies in a vacuum.
Yeah, very much so. So yeah, that's kind of like the thoughts on Apocalypse. It does look goofy. I'm kind of also kind of wary about some other things. I only found out this week, I don't know how long this has been common knowledge, but Olivia Munn was cast as Psylocke. Did you know about this at all, Nayman?
Not really. I didn't really follow the casting for movies I don't really have much interest in.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you know, Olivia Munn, she's hot. Does she look like Psylocke? Sure. Can she act for shit? No, she can't. So that's kind of a problem there, because as someone who's been a fan of anyone who's seen Attack of the Show over the years, back when she used to host it, would know that whenever they did skits on that show, that she just was fucking terrible at emoting at all, period. So, you know, I just hope that the character doesn't have many lines.
Maybe they'll spend some money on coaching her.
Maybe it'll be like Gal Gadot in Batman vs Superman, and just, you know, maybe she doesn't talk much either. I don't know. They just there seems to be a habit of just hiring, you know, they'll hire these great actors like Jared Leto or, you know, Henry Cavill and things like that to play these really great male leads, and when it comes to the female characters, they'll just hire anyone.
Unless your name's Harley Quinn.
Unless your name's Harley Quinn, correct. Anyway, that'll do it for talking about movies and whatnot. We're going to move on to a few quick topics to round out the podcast. So the first one was moving back to the ongoing saga back at Konami for Kojima Productions is the news that, well, we kind of knew this already, but it's been confirmed largely from an insider source that Hideo Kojima's name has been scrubbed from everything, that Kojima Productions has been completely dissolved, has been reabsorbed back into the company, so that's actually been confirmed. It was rumor for a while, and essentially Kojima is just being forced out of the company. So it's a dick move. Can we say anything more on that?
Not particularly, other than it's just kind of stupid that they would release a box that doesn't have Kojima's name on it, considering you basically, if you're buying a Metal Gear game, you know it's a Kojima game. You know who Hideo Kojima is. So it just seems like releasing a movie poster out for the world to see without the director's name on it. It's kind of like, well, okay, then who made this?
It'll be interesting to see what happens when the actual game comes out. You know, are we still going to have 40-minute long video trailers and 40-minute long cutscenes?
Well,
is it going to be all cut down?
I don't know. Good question. I mean, it was produced by Kojima, and you would think that it would be more trouble than it was worth if someone in the company had it out for him so bad that they would try and deliberately sabotage his product. But who knows?
Yeah, we don't really know at this point until the game comes out. Only interesting thing for me to come out of this was a joke picture that's Kojima and just a guy with a Konami hat that says, Kojima just goes, "I made this. You made this?" Konami takes it. "I made this."
Everything here is mine now. Alright, so that's Phantom Pain. Dead Island 2 is potentially cancelled because Deep Silver have basically fired the company that was was developing it. Again, dick move, guys.
I mean, I'll be interested to see whether or not it ever gets made. I mean, I must admit, I did play Dead Island, but I was very not impressed with it. It certainly wasn't what the emotional attachment of the trailers made it seem. And from what I understand, from what I've been reading and watching, is the game company wanted to take it in a different kind of darker direction than Deep Silver was willing to go in, and they pretty much parted ways at that point.
Bitch, I know you played Dead Island. I co-opted it with you.
Yeah, but I was never really impressed with it. Its game mechanics were okay, but I felt that they were very clunky. And I must admit, after we stopped playing it, I never really went back to it. Certainly didn't play Riptide or anything like that. Didn't really. It wasn't interesting enough for me to want to play it on my own.
I actually did go back and finish it by myself solo. Dead Island was kind of an interesting game. I don't know whether you ever played it, yeah, man. To me, it was kind of interesting in the sense that it felt like a indie game that was trying really, really, really hard to be a AAA game, but didn't quite know how to be.
Yeah, I honestly haven't played the game myself, so I'm pretty much relying on you two to fill in the voids here.
Yeah, fair enough. There's just really weird. There's just like at launch, there's a lot of very weird kind of things about the game in the sense that, like, Mel and I were playing it on PC, and yeah, we're talking about Ventrilo right now because we just enjoy Ventrilo primarily as a voice client because we seem to find it has the best kind of flexibility in terms of what we want to do, and the game had its own built-in voice chat, but you couldn't turn it off, so that was a nightmare because it sucked.
Yeah, their voice chat was pretty terrible through the whole thing, actually. And it was just those idiosyncrasies of, you're right, where it was an indie game trying to be a AAA game that just couldn't be either.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens to Dead Island 2, because obviously there was a trailer for it at last year's E3, but that was completely CG, so we have no idea how far along the game actually was in terms of development, so I mean, if we lose out on that, it doesn't seem like too big of a loss. Final topic is, we're going to go back to that old whipping horse kicking thing, mixing metaphors, I don't care. We're talking about Arkham Knight one more time, because the news has been released this week that not only are the developers for the PC version postponing the release of the DLC to September, but they're delaying it until September because that's the time they estimate that it will actually be fixed.
Pretty long time to be waiting for a game that came out at the end of June.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd pretty much say that would be the end. To me, I don't even know why they'd bother releasing the DLC, because anybody who actually gave a shit about it probably bought it on console, and anyone who got it on PC is going to be so pissed at you, they're probably not going to want to buy DLC at that point.
I mean, I read an article earlier this week. It was one of those sort of things from a developer who wouldn't name themselves, so that they posted on Reddit, so you can take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, they talk about things like RDR, which is rapid development release, which is essentially where a developer is rushing to meet a deadline. In this case, it's obviously a port of a game to PC, and they know that they actually know the game is broken on release. They're perfectly aware of it. The publisher is perfectly aware of it, but they just all agree that they're just going to force it out the door and patch it on day one.
And I certainly hope that things like Steam refunds and stuff like that just stop that practice. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to release a shit game, I hope now that the consumers have an avenue to basically slap you down every time you try that, they'll think twice about trying to do that rapid development release cycle, and maybe they'll think twice about trying to just shove a game out the door and hope for the best.
Yeah, and that's beautiful thinking, and I wish I could agree, but I think it'll take it, like, you know, we've been over this before, so I don't want to harp on it too long, but games like Assassin's Creed Rogue obviously came out not too long ago, and we suffered from, you know, equally terrible issues that, maybe not as crippling, but they were certainly equally as terrible issues that Arkham Knight did, and that's obviously not really, you know, making Warner Bros. Interactive think twice about releasing Arkham Knight in the state that they did.
Yeah, but the environment's changed. It's different now, because when they released that, you know, Steam refunds wasn't a thing. I mean, on console, yeah, they're not all that concerned, but PC, you know, we now have an avenue open to us that we didn't have before. And personally, you're right, it is a bit romantic, but I'm hoping that there will be that situation where anytime you try and pull this shit, there will be a backlash, and they will think twice. My only concern with that is it will go the other direction, where game companies will be very, very hesitant to port console games over to PC. They will start to ignore the PC market because they're so afraid that if they do farm it out to someone who really doesn't give a shit about it and isn't really all that concerned, will they then refuse to port games over to PC because they're so afraid that they will lose revenue out of it because these companies can't do what they're asked?
The funny thing is that, like, whether it actually, like, causes backlash in terms of refunds, reminds me so much of that scene from Fight Club where Edward Norton is saying that his job is to apply the formula that A times B times C equals X. And in this case, A being the time it takes to patch a game, times B being the amount of money it would take to patch the game, times C, which is the amount of money which they expect to lose from refunds, equals X. And if basically that number is, you know, is less attractive than what it would cost, how much money they expect to make from releasing it just by pushing it out the door, then they're not going to do it.
Yeah, which, like I said, it's still early days for Steam refunds, and Steam being, of course, the biggest platform for PC. It'll be interesting to see whether or not that formula is applied, where they just go, you know what, acceptable losses.
Pretty much. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this podcast. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. We did enjoy your company. It's been a treat and a pleasure. Mr. Nairman, where can people find you? What should they look out for if they're looking to see your gorgeous face?
You can find me on Twitter at NairmanBSC. You can also find me on my main YouTube channel, Braid Scratch Coms, where we release parts of video game commentaries every day, 5 days a week.
Indeed he does. Malimba, same question, but aimed at you.
You can find me on Malimba01, tweet me there. I am actually looking now at doing a retro run back and have not decided yet as to whether I want to do Morrowind or if I want to do Gothic 3. So if you can tweet me on that or leave a comment in the channel, I will be very interested to see what everyone says.
There you go, guys. If you want to see some classic PC gaming, flick a message to Mr. Malimba. If you want to talk to me, my Twitter is @KaneProvis, KanePro, V for Victor, IS. And I talk about lots of crap that nobody seems to be interested in, but who cares? It's the internet. That's it for us, guys. Thank you very much. We will see you very soon, and until then, take care.